Greetings, friends! Some folks believe that wristwatches are an unnecessary accessory in today's world of global technological advancements. Why buy a watch when you have a brand new smartphone in your pocket that can tell you the time and so much more? However, most people hold a different opinion. Wristwatches are not merely time-telling devices, they are powerful accessories that can emphasize the owner's individuality, high status, and position in society. And can any iPhone replace the legendary Rolex or Rado? Of course not. That's out of the question. Did you know that just 100 years ago, men did not wear wristwatches because it was considered poor taste and a woman's prerogative? Yes, that's right. At that time, almost all respectable gentlemen preferred pocket watches, believing that the small size of wristwatches simply could not accommodate a quality, durable, and precise mechanism. And they were probably entirely correct. A quality mechanism could not possibly fit into a beer bottle cap-sized watch. And perhaps, friends, things would have remained the same, and we would still be carrying large watches in our pockets if not for one skilled artisan who decided to overturn the opinions of more than half of the male population of the planet for the next 100 years. He did not fear taking risks, which forever inscribed his name in world history and changed the consciousness of all humanity. As you may have guessed, today, we will talk about the famous Swiss watch company Rolex, known throughout the world for its quality and special status. After all, the cost of these legendary watches sometimes exceeds the cost of the most expensive cars. And every self-respecting businessman and millionaire must have one in their wardrobe. So what exactly was the beginning of the story of Rolex? Who was that genius? What did he have to go through, and how did he achieve such incredible success? That's what we'll talk about today. The company's history began 115 years ago, and by the way, it was one of those cases when you work hard to earn your reputation, and then your reputation simply works for you. Rolex was founded back in 1905 by two relatives, Hans Wilsdorf and Alfred Davis. Hans had an idea that he had long been nurturing, and a clear plan to implement it. And Alfred had money that needed to be invested in something. And the most surprising thing was that Hans, a German by origin, had never been a hereditary watchmaker, and certainly not Swiss. He came from Bavaria, from a poor family where he spent almost all of his childhood. Hans was born in 1888, but at the age of 12, he became an orphan. But even despite such a serious blow in his life, he did not give up. The boy was taken to a local orphanage, where he fully immersed himself in his studies. And a little later, he earned a place in one of the best Swiss boarding schools, where he could not only study successfully, but even earn a living. And the boy was very determined and patient, as at that time all his peers from the orphanage were engaged in not always legal ways of making a living. But our hero preferred to sit with his books. Of course, it was not easy for him, he was a bit of an odd one out. But thanks to this, he graduated from school with honors. And then without any difficulty found himself a job in a large company that was engaged in importing pearls. So by the age of 20, he, as it seemed to him then, had found his place in this vast world. The boy was satisfied with everything. He had a stable income and career plans. But one day, on a very ordinary day, he received a letter from a school friend that changed his entire life and history in general. It was this schoolmate who offered the young man a place in a small company that was just starting to export Swiss watches. Yes, my friends, during this time, Swiss watches were already renowned for their excellent quality. But they were pocket watches, as he later said. For me, it was something new. And I thought, what difference does it make what we sell? And so began his story of watches. After working for the company for several years, in 1903, the 22-year-old moved to London, the city of ambition. It was in London that he became the official representative of the Swiss watch manufacturer La Chaux de Fonds, for which he had worked for several years. His main task was to expand the markets and increase sales. And that's exactly what he did in England, selling Swiss watches. His business was thriving, sales were growing every day, and he was finding new buyers, expanding his customer base. The young man settled in a small house closer to the center of London, and after a few months he met a girl who became his first true love, and whom he married after 6 months. Later, he became a British subject. Thus, at the age of 24, having started a large and strong family, he was sitting by the fireplace one evening after a family celebration, chatting with his stepbrother Alfred Davis about his life. They discussed how it was time for him to start his own business, as Hans had been considering an idea for several months. But he didn't have enough money to start, and Alfred said he would help him only if he was 100% sure. And so in 1905, Hans and Alfred became business partners, and a small company called Wilsdorf and Davis appeared in London, dealing in the supply of watch mechanisms and the assembly of watches. Their business model was extremely simple. They bought all the mechanisms from other manufacturers, assembled them under their own brand, and sold them skillfully to their large customer base. But no matter how well the company was doing, despite the increase in sales and profits, Hans was plagued by doubts, and a feeling that what he was doing did not make him happy. Every time he came to a meeting to present his product, he was asked, "Who makes your watches, and where are they made?" To which Hans always replied that the mechanisms and cases were made in Switzerland. But in order to convince potential buyers of their quality, he had to name the manufacturer's factory, to which he always heard the same thing. "Why should we buy from you if we can order everything directly from the factory?" Then Hans began to think about his own production. Furthermore, almost all pocket watches were made the same way and did not differ much from each other, and to amaze the world at that time was simply impossible, which means that the world needed something new, something that did not exist before. With these thoughts, Hans decided to create a new innovation, men's wristwatches. By the way, this idea did not come to him just like that. The thing is that pocket watches annoyed our genius. He had to constantly reach into his pocket to look at them, and he hated it. So he had long been thinking about making wristwatches at least for himself. In addition, Hans often carried something heavy in his hands, and he could not look at his watch because he had to put down his portfolio first and then find out the time. But despite his desire, it was difficult to bring this idea to life. The compact watch mechanisms of that time were not particularly accurate, and therefore displayed the wrong time. To solve this problem, Hans traveled all over Europe in search of masters who could make what he had in mind, namely a small and compact watch mechanism that would be perfectly accurate. And over time, he succeeded. The factory in Bienne, Switzerland, which is now a small town called Biel, with only 5,000 inhabitants, agreed to experiment and make a small mechanism. This is how the first Rolex watches appeared. Of course, sales of these miracle watches were not strong. Long ago, nobody bought wristwatches, and many even laughed at Hans. "You offer us watches?" they said. "Wristwatches? No way." Breaking stereotypes was always difficult, but our hero did not give up. He decided to promote the new product by wearing it himself. He personally wore the wristwatches on his arm, and they later became the best advertisement. Every time he was at an important meeting or with friends, he always raised his hand and looked at the time. At first, people were surprised, but they soon realized how practical it was and started asking for watches just like his. And so began the era of wristwatches. In 1905, he released the first wristwatches of his own production, with silver and gold straps, which soon found buyers and gradually began to be in demand among men. But that was not all. The following year, Hans prepared a new innovation, to which he made a special emphasis. At the beginning of 1906, he offered his customers new inventions, a flexible metal bracelet that had no analogs before. It was something amazing and incredible. Thanks to him, the W&D watch company became one of the most popular and best-selling watch models in all of England, and this happened in just a few months. After this stunning success, Hans began to think about changing the name of the company. It should be loud, memorable, and short, and most importantly, easily fit on the dial. As the genius himself said, "I tried various combinations of letters. I came up with about 100 different names, but I didn't like any of them." One morning, as he was riding an imperial horse-drawn carriage down Cheapside, someone whispered, "Rolex," in his ear. And on July 2nd, 1908, Wilsdorf and Davis changed their name to the new one. By the way, why Hans decided to name the company this way, even the representatives of this brand keep it a secret to this day. Long ago, it is said that the name Rolex was simply a collection of letters, a short name that was spoken the same way in any language. It was at this moment that Hans Wilsdorf began to work hard on the development of his own clock mechanism. He studied the movements of the gears on his own, observing their work, and after much trial and error, disassembling and assembling hundreds of different clocks, he received an official certificate of chronometric precision in 1910, a first in the history of wristwatches. In just 4 years, he improved the mechanism so much that it was awarded a Class A rating, previously given only to marine chronometers. It was truly amazing how precise the mechanism was, a perfect creation. From 1910 to 1915, Rolex wristwatches became a highly recognizable brand, and many aristocrats of the time already preferred them. November 15, 1915, became an important day for the company. It was then that Rolex officially registered its name, which was changed to Rolex Watch in 1919. Of course, the First World War had an impact on the company's work, but it was not as critical as it seemed at first. During this period, the watch brand only strengthened its position in the hearts of many buyers, most of whom were soldiers. The reason was that it was inconvenient to use pocket watches on campaigns or during battles, but wristwatches saved men's lives many times. Guided by their needs, the company rapidly advanced in future scientific developments. Soon, in 1920, Rolex made an important decision to move its main office and all production to Geneva, the clock capital of the world. It is believed that all innovative models of this brand were developed there. The company grew quickly, and its staff was carefully selected by Wilsdorf himself. The creation of the Rolex Oyster watch, resistant to dust and water, was an important event for the brand. However, it is one thing to claim something and another to prove it. In 1927, a young Englishwoman named Mercedes Gleitze wore these watches while crossing the English Channel. Even after 10 hours in the water, the watch was still working, proving its quality. The company advertised this achievement in the London Daily Mail, which marked the beginning of the brand's concept of companions. Just 3 years later, the company invented and patented the world's first mechanism with automatic winding powered by a perpetual rotor, which still forms the basis of almost all modern watches. In 1930, the brand invested again in advertising and gave its watches to the world's fastest thief, Sir Malcolm Campbell. On September 4, 1935, he broke a new world record with a watch from the well-known company. In 1945, the world's first watch with a date index and a window on the dial called Datejust was released, and the watches were still tested in various extreme conditions. For example, just 2 years later, one of the Rolex watch models broke the sound barrier together with pilot Chuck Yeager, and later he wrote about the watch. "My passenger did not let me down even during the fastest and highest flight." Once again, Rolex confirmed its quality and durability in any situation, and they earned a reputation for being indestructible. At that time, people even joked that if you threw a brick at them, the brick would be the one to suffer. In the early 1950s, the brand released a series of special watches designed for people in specific professions, such as mountain climbing or diving. In the year 1951, to celebrate the release of 150,000 watches, a Datejust model was created with the engraving of DDE and 5 stars, which appeared for the first time on the wrist of the future American president, General Dwight David Eisenhower. But the true legend emerged 3 years later. In 1953, watches were released specifically designed for pilots who crossed multiple time zones. It was important for them to know the exact time in different parts of the world, as the lives of hundreds of people depended on it. One of the first models, the GMT Master, was tested by pilots from Pan American Airways. That same year, the legendary Rolex Submariner was released, equipped with a rotating bezel that allowed professional divers to read their dive time. Another famous Rolex model, the President, was created specifically for Lyndon Johnson. The case of this model was made of 18-karat gold and platinum. In 2005, at an auction, a Rolex day-date watch with a personal engraving, Jack, with love as always from Marilyn, appeared. This model was given by Marilyn Monroe to John F. Kennedy. He ordered to get rid of it, not even suspecting that his request was ignored. The watches were sold for $120,000. Of course, friends, We cannot overlook the pricing policy of the company. While other brands compete with each other in price, Rolex simply sets the price at its discretion without considering competitors. In brand stores, you will never encounter discounts or sales, except when the company's dealers offer discounts due to their own financial problems. But the most interesting thing is that Rolex customers are willing to buy watches from the company at set prices, even during times of crisis. You will never buy a genuine Rolex online, but that does not mean that the company does not have its own website. It does, and you can easily find all the information about the model you are interested in. However, you can only purchase it in person at a Rolex store. For us, the most important rule of our company is to allow our customers to touch and try on the watches, to see them up close in all their intricate details, which cannot be fully appreciated simply by looking at a picture on the internet. Right now, we have decided not to advertise on television or radio, since our representatives believe that this is not our target audience. The minimum cost for a Rolex watch is $5,000, which is why you often see our brand advertised at various tennis, golf, or even Formula One tournaments. Our primary message is that Rolex watches are a symbol of success. If you have already achieved success, if you are a respected individual who has earned a lot of money, then congratulations. You have earned the right to wear our watches. Few people know that Rolex is the most exclusive watch company in the world. To simply see our production process and talk to our staff, interested parties must pass through many checks and obtain personal approval from the CEO. Even many famous media outlets have been unable to gain access to the most secretive parts of our manufacturing and assembly process over the years. Yes, my friends, it is all that serious. Of course, our brand, like many others, suffers from mass counterfeiting. The Rolex Submariner is actually one of the most frequently counterfeited watch models in the world. To protect all of our original watches, we use a unique marking system which has even helped the police solve a murder case. Each model has its own unique serial number, allowing the police to easily identify the true owner of the watch. In other words, Rolex watches are like passports. Our customers are often famous people. A fascinating story took place during the filming of the first James Bond movie. To give the main character a sense of status, they needed a watch. The movie's budget did not allow for a new watch to be purchased, so one of the main producers simply took off his brand new Rolex Submariner and gave it to Sean Connery, the actor playing James Bond. In hidden advertisements for watches, the director of Titanic, James Cameron, took part, often appearing in them on the set. In 2013, the brand launched an advertising campaign featuring celebrities who preferred Rolex, including famous people such as Pablo Picasso, Elvis Presley, Martin Luther King, and dozens of other mega-famous people. The company's slogan was, "They not only tell time, they tell a story." Today, the company's stocks are not traded on the stock exchange because the company takes its security and status seriously. The company's biggest financial successes remain unknown and shrouded in secrecy, as does everything else about this brand. Even on the official website, you will only find a few lines, as well as on Wikipedia, which is quite strange for such a recognizable and prestigious brand. But once again, all of this hints that only a select few can afford certain things. In 2016, the brand made it to Forbes rankings, and the company was valued at an unreal $9 billion. Since 2014, the brand has been headed by Jean-Frédéric Dufour. By the way, the most expensive watches were sold on October 26, 2017, by the auction house Philips Dupuy. The Rolex Daytona 1968 model was sold for $17,752,500. Can you imagine that? Also, it's worth remembering that Rolex is currently the #1 watch brand. It is thanks to Rolex that many discoveries were made, such as shockproof glass, waterproof watches, and many other things that are considered normal for us today. But few know that it was Rolex that invented these things. The company currently employs 6,000 people, and production is located in Switzerland. As for the father of the founder, Hans Wilsdorf passed away in 1960. He entrusted his company to a trust fund that represented the interests of his children. He made sure that the company did not fall into the hands of outsiders, thanks to a well-designed system of share ownership that prevented anyone from acquiring even a part of the company without the consent of all shareholders. In addition, Wilsdorf limited the power of the owners over the managers. In his company, the owners cannot pressure the managers or force them to make quick decisions based solely on profit considerations. Therefore, the management of the company is based on a long-term strategy. It is also worth noting that even 60 years after the founder's death, the company still operates strictly according to his principles. They still take great care of their brand. Rolex does not allow oversaturation of the market and creates an artificial shortage by producing no more than 800,000 watches per year. They do not license their name for use on other products like glasses, bags, cars, or clothing. They only make watches, and they do it better than anyone else. Of course, we can only say that Hans Wilsdorf was lucky and that he was in the right place at the right time, but we should not forget that he started from the bottom. He was not a watchmaker, and he did not even have enough money to start his own company. But he had a dream. He wanted to make the world a little better and do something that no one had done before him, and the results of his work are impressive. His children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are provided for decades to come, all thanks to one man. As tradition teaches us, all great things start small, and Rolex is a good example of that. Friends, what do you personally think of this brand, and do you believe that wristwatches are still relevant in our time or not? Share your opinion in the comments. Also, please rate the video, and see you soon.